There's a script that modern society, television, and the psychology industry have tried to inject into every man's mind. The myth that you must talk about your feelings. They tell you that suppressing your emotions is toxic. They constantly push you to open up, to confess your insecurities, to cry in front of your partner, and to show yourself as vulnerable to the world. They sell it to you as if it were the highest level of spiritual evolution. But if we remove this mask of cheap morality and observe human behavior through the lens of dark psychology, we discover that this demand for vulnerability is in reality a tactical trap. The world is not a safe place. The marketplace is a ruthless battleground, and human relationships, whether we like it or not, operate under dynamics of power and hierarchy. When society asks you to open up and show where you're hurt, it's not to heal you. It's because an emotionally incontinent man, a man who can't contain his own psychological pressure, is easy to manipulate, predict, and dominate. Think about it in mathematical terms. What exactly happens when you sit down with a friend, a business colleague, or even your partner and confess your deepest fears? What happens when you tell them you feel like a fraud, that you're terrified of going bankrupt, or that you're emotionally devastated by your past? You think you're building intimacy. You think you're forming an unbreakable bond based on honesty. But what you're actually doing is handing them high-caliber ammunition. You're handing over the blueprints of your weaknesses. Human nature is opportunistic. Those very confessions you made in a moment of weakness, seeking comfort, are precisely the weapons that will be used against you the day that relationship deteriorates. When there's a serious argument, when you're competing for a promotion, or when money is involved, your vulnerability will be used like a dagger straight to your nervous system. The dangerous man knows this. Never give anyone the instruction. Manual on how to destroy you. This is where modern therapists go completely wrong. They tell you that if you don't talk about your problems, you're repressing them and you'll eventually explode. They confuse repression with containment. Repression is denying that you feel pain. It's lying to yourself. But restraint, which is the absolute mark of a strong and stoic person, is acknowledging pain in all its magnitude, feeling it burn in your gut, and making the conscious decision not to vomit it out on others. Strong men do feel. They feel betrayal, fear, anger, and sadness with brutal intensity. But they have built a titanium vault around their minds. They process pain in isolation. They bleed alone in the dark, far from prying eyes, because they know that in the ocean of life, if a drop of your blood falls into the water, you won't attract rescuers. You'll attract sharks. Talking about your problems rarely solves them. It only shifts the burden onto someone else and diminishes your own value in the marketplace of perceptions. In the next phase, we'll discover why your partner loses respect for you when you become overly emotional, and how silence is the heaviest armor a man can wear. We now enter the most censored and uncomfortable territory of human psychology, the dynamic between the vulnerable man and his partner. Modern television programs and magazines tell women they want a man in touch with his emotions, a man who isn't afraid to cry on their shoulder and confess his darkest insecurities. It's an absolute lie, a deadly trap for your self-respect. A man breaks down, cries constantly from the stress of the world, or shows terror at the future. His partner can hug him. She can say words of encouragement and stroke his head as if he were a frightened child. But in that precise, microscopic second of utter vulnerability, something ancient and primal breaks in her reptilian brain. The polarity is shattered. Biologically, women seek security in men. They look for an unyielding granite mountain to stand firm against the storm. If the mountain trembles with fear and cries out for rescue, that subconscious trust evaporates. Maternal compassion replaces respect, and where there is no respect, sexual attraction and loyalty slowly but inevitably die. No woman in the history of humankind has ever felt deeply attracted to and protected by a man she pities. Modern society tells you it's unfair that you have to silently bear all the stress. They're right, it is unfair. But power, sovereignty, and leadership have never had anything to do with fairness. They have to do with the weight of the crown. Imagine a ship in the middle of a brutal Category 5 hurricane. Giant waves crash over the deck. If the captain emerges from his cabin crying, screaming that he's scared, that he doesn't know what to do, and pleading for emotional support from the sailors... What do you think will happen? The crew will panic and eventually mutiny. Your family, your business, your legacy... That's your crew. And you're the damn captain. You don't have the psychological luxury of panicking out loud. Your strict duty, your moral obligation as a man of power, is to absorb the chaos, swallow the terror, look the storm in the eye, and project absolute, dictatorial calm toward your people. You need to be the stress buffer, not the amplifier. When the world is falling apart, your people don't need to know how terrified you are. They need to look at your stony face and be reassured that everything is under control, even if inside you feel like you're about to explode. Does this mean that the dangerous man must swallow poison until he drowns in his own repression? Does it mean that he can never utter a word about the burden he carries on his shoulders? No, the strategist is not a suicidal island, but a fortress with its drawbridge raised. If a truly strong man needs to process a devastating blow, he doesn't run to his partner to vomit his emotions out from eternal comfort. Nor does he go to those mediocre friends who, deep down, will be glad to see him fail. The dangerous man only speaks to his iron brotherhood. One or two men he trusts implicitly. Powerful men, battle-tested in life's wars, who bear scars deeper than his own. And when he speaks to them, it's not to play the victim, complain, or seek a hug. He speaks to expose the wound, tactically assess the damage, and coldly devise the precise strategy to obliterate the problem the very next day. They don't seek pity. They seek military logistics. If the dangerous man doesn't unleash his emotions on others, what does he do with all that inner fire? What does he do with the rage, the betrayal, and the crushing pressure of failure? The answer is the alchemy of pain. While the weak man seeks a shoulder to cry on to release his energy, the stoic man locks that energy away in the boiler room of his own mind. He knows that raw emotion, especially negative emotion, is an immeasurable source of energy. When you feel broken, you have two options. You can use your mouth to talk about how bad you feel, wasting that energy on words that are carried away by the wind. Or you can shut your damn mouth, channel that suffocating anguish into your muscles, your intellect, and your business, and transform it into ruthless execution. True therapy for man isn't found on a psychologist's couch. It's found in the weight of the barbell at the gym, in the solitude of his study at 3 a.m, and in the obsessive building of his empire. Pain is the hammer. Your mind is the anvil. Stop complaining about the blows and start forging your sword in the darkness. Modern society accuses you of being cold or distant because you don't spend all day talking about your feelings. They don't understand that a man of high worth doesn't need to use the language of victims. He uses the language of sovereigns, provision and protection. A king doesn't tell his kingdom how much he suffers for them. A king secures the borders, fills the granaries, and beheads the invaders. When a strong man loves, he doesn't show it by crying out of vulnerability. He shows it by working 16 hours a day so his family will want for nothing. He shows it by absorbing financial chaos, solving problems before his people even know they exist, and standing firm like a mountain when the whole world panics. Your actions, your quiet sacrifice, and your ability to keep your empire afloat are the deepest, most manly, and most sacred expression of emotion there is. If modern society can't read that language because they're obsessed with crocodile tears and emotional incontinence, that's their problem, not yours. The time has come to reject the programming of weakness. The Matrix wants you vulnerable because a vulnerable man is a manageable man. They want you to open your doors so they can enter and dismantle your psyche from within, but you no longer play their game. From today onward, you reclaim sovereignty over your emotions. You understand that your mind is a private fortress, a sacred territory where no one enters without invitation, and where no wound is exposed to public view. Let weak men continue, competing to see who is more fragile, who has more trauma, and who cries the loudest seeking validation. You will operate in the silence of the gods, take on the weight of the crown, swallow the pressure, master the inner storm without a single muscle in your face betraying you. When pain comes, don't seek solace. Seek work. Become that dark, impenetrable, and unyielding monolith whose mere presence commands absolute respect. The world doesn't respect men who explain why they are suffering. The world kneels before men who suffer in absolute secrecy and yet conquer everything they touch.